Good morning, everybody. I hope that you're watching this one because you've watched the introduction and you're interested in either following me or creating your own journey and writing the Bible in your own hand. Again, this is for me, it's just to glorify our Lord and hopefully reach people that maybe don't believe yet and that this might help them, or if you are following me and you do believe, then that's awesome. I would love to share this with somebody. So my first video, this first video after the introduction, is going to be about Genesis 1. And basically it's God creating the earth and the man and everything in it. Scholars believe that the author of Genesis was Moses, and that he wrote this sometime after God used him to lead his people out of Egypt. And so this would put it between that time and the time of his death in Exodus. It'd be about 1440 to 1400 BC. So Moses probably wrote this when the Israelites and Moses were wandering around in the desert. Obviously there's no archaeology pre-earth, obviously, because that was just the void and there's nothing there. So the archaeology starts once God has made the earth and put everything and everyone in it. And the area that we consider where the Garden of Eden is called the Fertile Crescent. And we're not sure, or scholars are not sure where that is. It's mentioned that it's by a river that is separated into four heads. That's in Genesis 2. So people talk about that is probably somewhere near the head of the Persian Gulf, where the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers merge. Others believe the flood, and that'll be in Genesis 6 through 9, would have made the original location undetectable anyway, so we don't know. And, God put the angels in front of the Garden of Eden with the flaming swords, so we're not meant to find it. So there's that. So the main theme and purpose of Genesis is to tell the origin of everything other than God, the only pre-existing being. It's the foundation for everything that we're going to be writing and reading about the Bible, and everything comes into play here. So in Genesis 1 and 2, we learn that God created a good and abundant world. He brought order and light to which was dark and chaotic. He's our ultimate life giver, created life and gave all of humanity a purpose. And that purpose was to know and to glorify him. But man rebelled, as they do today and as they're going to do tomorrow. They were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So the theme of this is God's goodness, man's rebellion, and the consequences of that rebellion. And it plays out in the generations that follow, plays out today. And so we can only sit here and wonder, as I'm sure that they did generations ago, when the Lord's going to come back and save us all, bring us up into heaven to glorify him at his feet. So in Genesis 1 through 3, again, God created a perfect world. He filled it with abundance and was free of sin. And through a tree known as the tree of good and evil, God presented mankind with a choice: honor him or act as their own gods. And they chose rebellion and were cast out of that garden. And their relationship with God and one another was broken. There's a lot of information that says that Genesis was only a myth. And if that's true, if it was only a myth, then there shouldn't be any evidence that proves that Genesis was an actual, that the information in Genesis were true and accurate. In the 1970s, archaeologists discovered tablets made before 2000 BC at Ebla in northern Syria, and among them were found creation tablets that say, Lord of heaven and earth. The earth was not, you created it. The light of day was not, you created it. And so cylinder seals are tiny stone rollers with carved three-dimensional images that you just kind of rolled. And they would roll it across wet clay to impress picture patterns onto the clay before taking it to a kiln. And one of the oldest seals shows a seated woman reaching for one of the two fruits hanging from a tree. A man also reaches for the fruit opposite her, and behind her a serpent slithers. And it has every key element from the fall of man found in Genesis 3. So another spectacular tablet from Nippur of Babylonia narrates Noah's flood. And that was probably written before other flood tales that added myths about angry gods. Herman Hilprecht excavated tablet CBM 13532 in the 1890s from a library that the Elamites had destroyed before 2100 BC, and not many centuries after the flood event itself. And the tablet's broken lines of text say, "It shall sweep away all men together before the deluge coming forth. Build a great ship, it shall be a houseboat carrying what has been saved. Bring the beasts of the field, the birds of heaven." So secular sources also support creation beginnings, the garden corruption, and the flood catastrophe. So what about the language confusion at Babel or God's covenant with Abraham? Ancient Romans carefully protect the sibling books as part of Apollo worship. Which Genesis event does this sibling remnant call to mind? And it says, all mankind one language only knew, and now all intercourse by some occult and overruling power ceased among men. But utterance they strove, perplexed and anxious to disclose their mind, but their lip failed them, and in lieu of words produced a painful babbling sound. The place was thence called Babel. And also the famous Tower of Babel stela shows Nebuchadnezzar II, who destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC, and his plans to finish building the infamous tower that had been abandoned hundreds of years earlier. So secular sources also confirm kings and cities mentioned in Genesis 14. The first verse says, "And it comes to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations." In 1895, Assyriologist Theophilus Pinches found a cuneiform tablet SP3-2 archived at the British Museum. He presented his translation to the Victoria Institute in 1897, showing what the Hebrew of Genesis calls Arioch es Ariaku, Chedorlaomer as Kudular Lagmal, and Tidal as Tudhula, and possibly Amraphel as Hammurabi, though the text breaks off after Hamu. Genesis 14:2 refers to Sodom, Gomorrah, and 3 other cities of the plain. Excavations at Bab Ededra, southeast of the Dead Sea, starting in the 1960s, revealed many clues that matched the Sodom account. For example, the city and even its nearby cemetery were burned from the top down, and in places lie beneath several feet of ash even today. So all of these artifacts and more, including a 2,000-year-old stone commemorative building over the cave at Machpelah, called the Tomb of the Patriarchs, bury the idea that Genesis was a myth. Archaeology clearly confirms Genesis. So anything that I reference, I'm going to put into the information under the YouTube video. So again, I'm going to try to do 2 more videos today because I've already written up through Genesis 3. But I just wanted to give a basic rundown of what Genesis was about and whether it really has been proven by archaeology that it's not a myth and that it's a fact. And I would greatly love reading any comments, information that I don't have. And if you disagree with what the information, I would like to, if you correct me, that'd be fine too. And I'd like that. I don't want to give out false information. So have a very blessed day, and I hope that your journey is going really well. Thank you.